Music Business, What Is This? Is a podcast that focuses on the ever-changing music industry and presents issues and concerns that the average and above average musician has or will encounter. Hey everybody, I'm Richard Johnson.
And I'm Jeremiah Hunt.
Today we're going to be talking about copyright laws. That's right, copyright, something that you should do. A lot of us do, some of us don't, but we want to get into some details about why it's important, why it's not important, which we know it's really important, and how it can help you, how it can assist you. All right, so let's get going. What's a copyright?
Well, the Google definition, a copyright grants protection under the law for original works of authorship fixed with in a tangible form of expression. Copyright protection affords the composer 6 exclusive rights, which roughly correspond to various licensing processes and revenue streams.
Cool. So let me start with the question to you. Have you ever done a copyright?
I actually have. I did my first copyright last year when I released my first EP.
Okay, EP, and what's the name of that?
The name of the EP is called 33.
33. Okay, and people can obviously find that on iTunes,
Spotify.
Groovy. So tell us a little bit about that process for you, like doing it first time, whatever comes to mind.
Well, I was a little concerned at first because, you know, it's obviously I'm not a big artist, but I'm also not a beginner. So I was asking myself, should I, get this copyright? Like, is a lot of people going to hear this?
Is it worth it?
Is it worth it to get a copyright? That's the question that most artists ask themselves. As a beginner, likely the songs that you write probably won't get heard. So, it's up to you whether or not you want to do the official copyright. But if you're a professional artist and you're established, then you have more of a chance at your song being heard.
Okay, so let's just talk about that. Okay, if you're a professional artist, this word's come up in several other podcasts, and yes, we're trying to be professional, but the goal is to be heard, right?
Absolutely.
So even if you're not a huge artist, you want to make sure you have that opportunity for someone to use your music so you can get paid.
Yep.
And that's the, I don't want to say the up or downside to it, but like you said, when you first get started, you're like, well, I'm not sure if I need this, if I should do it, who's going to hear it. In today's age, you could be anybody,
right,
and put it on social media, and now 800 million people have heard it. Just like that. So I think the way you were explaining it was super valid for a long period of time. But now, the world can know who you are within 2 seconds,
right,
if you use the right forms of media. So that's something to definitely consider. Now, how did you find out about copyright? Did you think of it, or was somebody like, you better copyright it?
Well, yeah, I think there's always this, whenever someone writes something great, there's always this underlying fear of, is someone else going to write something that sounds just like this, call it the same name.
Right.
So, that came into my psyche.
Okay, so you thought about that. Now that brings up a whole another issue. Because technically, what a lot of people don't understand what copyright is, someone can have the same idea, right? The idea is not copyrightable. It's actually the expression of the idea. And that's what a lot of people don't realize. For instance, let's say I have a bass, and let's call the bass Wilma, and I write a song about my bass. I love my bass, Wilma, right? And then let's say Barney writes a song about his bass, and he calls it Wilma. Is someone in trouble because it's the same idea, same bass? That's the question. No, it's not. They can both have the same idea, but William and Barney are different people. So it's the expression. That's what's actually copyrightable. Now, you expressing it, how you do that when it's recorded, the way you do it is not going to be the same as the way I do it. Right. If that was the case, there's a gazillion songs about struggles and love and all these things, but the idea is the same. So that's something that people have to be made aware of. It's the expression of an idea, not the idea. Right. So copyright is very important. I remember doing my first copyright, and it was, I'm not that old, but it was long enough where you turned in sheet music or a CD or a tape and you sent it in with the registration. I had to download the forms, fill it out. I think it was, I don't know, $35, $50, something like that. And at the time I was like, oh, this is expensive.
Yeah.
Now I'm like, oh, this is nothing. But I did that and sent it in and hoped I did everything right. You know, I tried to call DC, get somebody on the phone. That's where you didn't have a mobile phone, had to talk to people. Got the information, got it done, sent it in. And then you just wait. Right. And this is the thing that I was like, is my song copyrighted once they get it? Or how does this work? And I started asking questions, and I got some good information that the minute you've actually written a song, it's copywritten. You know, so that's what you need to know. It's copywritten. So if someone wants to take it, there's going to be an issue. The advantage of a federal copyright, and I do want to say federal because it's not a state issue thing, it's federal, is that if someone tries to take it and you register it, now you have something that's legally registered where people can say, oh, well, you can't contest this. Right. You can contest something where, oh, I wrote this 8 months ago or 3 years ago, and someone else says, yeah, well, I did it 3 years ago in one day. So mine's older. Right. I mean, and these situations have happened. You know, we've all heard about the horror stories in music, and I wrote this, or I so-and-so stole this, or we worked on it together, blah, blah, blah. But if you use copyright correctly and send it in and register it, it eliminates all of that. You know, so I think that's a point that you must consider. If you think your song has a lot of value and credibility, register it, copyright it immediately. If you don't think your song has no credibility, register it immediately. It doesn't matter, because you may think it's not worth much, but someone else may hear some value in it. Right. And then they say, oh, I could use this for a film score or something. This 30-bar section or whatever, and you may not even be thinking about it in those terms. So, okay, so tell us a little bit more about your situation with the copyright. Well,
going back to it, I kind of wanted to ask you a question, because when I did do the copyright, I copyrighted the whole EP as a collective work. And I wanted to ask you, what is the difference, or what is the pros and cons of copyrighting a collective work, a compilation of songs, or as opposed to just one song at a time and copyrighting each of those songs?
There's definitely a difference. If you do it individually, you're paying for that individually, right? So you're paying for that one song. Right. Nowadays, most musicians who are doing a whole recording, especially when it's something like jazz, right? We tend to do a whole recording. It's cheaper, right? Today, the copyright cost is $65 today, right? So I'm saying that as of now. If you watch this in 3 years, I'm sure it's going to go up.
Yeah.
But for the collection, I believe it's $85, and it's cheaper overall. You know, who wants to pay, say you do 10 songs and pay $65 each time for an individual?
Right.
Now, the flip side of that is if you're only doing a single, you're going to have to pay that. Right. So, yeah, there's an advantage to putting it in a collective work. So I definitely recommend that if your songs are cohesively being used. Right. So, for instance, about 10 years ago, I was working on a Broadway show, and all the music was for one show. So there, it makes sense that all those pieces collectively go together because it's part of a show. One piece leads to the next. It's like looking at a story or a film. If you take out a 2-minute segment of a film, you can do that, but people don't have a relationship to what happened before and what after. You know, so when you register it as a collective work, they can look at this and say, there's no question. Here's the order. This was number 12 of 26 songs. That's the advantage. Right now, if you're just doing singles, yeah, individual, you know, that's going to be the way to go. And you also may be under time limit. So you want to be aware of that. Like, what is your time crunch?
Right.
And who else has heard this? I think the more people who have heard your song, the more concerned you should be. Because then you don't know what people are going to do. Someone could use that section or that part or blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
If you've pretty much kept it on lockdown, then yeah, register as a whole work. You know, or you trust the people you're with. Like if I'm rehearsing with musicians I trust and, you know, they're not going to do anything with it, okay, then I have some time to develop it if that's necessary. Sometimes now with Pro Tools and Logic, you can do everything, get samples and hear what it sounds like on your own. So you can still register it as a work, but it really depends, I think, on how you work as an artist.
Right.
And how soon, like do you need it immediately? What's gonna happen? Does this have to be out in 3 weeks? Right. And having said that, yes, it's copywritten immediately, but still you want to get it registered and get it done as soon as possible. Cool. So anything else about your experience with the copyright?
Yeah, after the copyright, I paid I think it was $65, and about 3 weeks later, I received that paper in the mail, the certificate.
You got it that fast?
Yeah.
Wow, that's incredible. Now, you did it all online, right?
Yes.
See, that's the difference. When I first did it, it was mail, like straight up, put it in the mailbox.
Yeah.
I didn't get a return for like 8 months. And I was like, did they get it? Did they not? It was a long time. Well, you got to think about when it's snail mail, they're getting thousands, hundreds of thousands of works. And somebody or a team of people got to look through, open all the packages, look through it. That's a lot of work. So yeah, it takes time.
Wow.
The beautiful thing now is that everything's digital. So like you said, I'm surprised that you said 3 weeks. That's that's like, wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Right. And it's all digital, which you did, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So then you just put it in the computer, bam, they get it, register it, and you get the form back. Now, did you get it in the mail or was it email?
I got it in the mail. Yeah.
So they're still official.
Yeah.
It's still official, right? So that's a good thing. So that's probably where part of that fee is going to, the mail. Yeah. But I can tell you it's a nice feeling when you get that paper.
It is.
Yeah, because I've done it too recently and I was like, this is dope.
Yeah.
You're right. It's a small part of the whole thing, but at the same time, it's still a part of it. And you know this is a work you've created and it's registered.
And official.
Now, here's another thing. There's different copyrights in different countries. Did you know that?
I didn't.
Yeah. So there's the United States, there's Canada, there's Europe. Right. So this leads to another question, right? If you copyright it here, is it valid there?
Right.
And there's been some issues where people have gone to court. Fortunately, you know, the music industry, as large as it is, at the end of the day, it's pretty small. So music is out immediately and people tend to respect that, the courts, as long as it's registered somewhere.
Right.
Now, some artists registered in different countries. Okay, that makes sense if you want to take that extra step. But if you believe your song is going to be a hit, I would definitely do here, Canada and Europe, and Japan. Don't forget about Asia. I would definitely say don't forget about Asia because you don't know where your song is going to sell the most and who's going to use it. What if a Japanese film wants to pick it up? Right? Yes, copyrighted in the States, but if 10 million people in Japan are checking it out, you may want to do that as soon as possible. So another aspect of this is thinking about what do you envision the song being used for? Is it for a movie? Is it for a video game? You know, a lot of times when people are writing songs, I'll say, well, where do you see this? Do you see it in a Netflix show? Where?
Right.
And that will help you determine, okay, where it needs to be put, who needs to check it out, and ultimately where you probably should copyright it, right? Just to be safe.
Yeah.
Right. And nowadays, like I said, you just don't know. Anybody could pick it up and use it. And you want to make sure you're covered so you can get paid.
Right.
At the end of the day, we want to get paid. I mean, it's a business, you know, that's what this is about. And if you don't have those things in place, you're going to lose out and wonder why some of your friends or other people are getting those opportunities. The other thing too is you don't want to get in a situation where someone asks for it and you go through all the procedures and you're wondering, why am I not getting the proceeds the way I should get it? You just want to make sure you cover as much as you can up front. So on the back end, when someone's asking you, like a music supervisor, is this copywritten? Yes, blah, blah, blah. Yes. If they ask you 15 questions, which is pretty normal, even if you don't have all of them, you want to have at least 12 or 13 of yeses.
Yeah.
And when they start hearing no's, it's not looking good for you. It's not looking good for you. Now, one last thing I want to talk about is you want to be careful when you start dealing with outside sources who want your music and they ask you to change the title on it. Because I had this situation happen about 2 years ago during the pandemic. A big LA company approached me about my record label and said, we see you have a catalog. And I said, yes, I have a catalog. And we'd like to listen to your catalog. So I sent it to them. They checked it out and they asked, oh, we've got some great tunes. You got some great tunes. This is how we work. And they said, we'd like to use it, but we want to change the title to something similar and recopyright it under that. So I said, let me do some research. And I said, okay, what I found out is they were trying to, and it's not illegal. Plenty of places do this to get their song. People do this to get their songs out. But they want to make sure they get their credit on the publisher's side or the writer's side. So they change the title. That way they get a certain percentage, whatever that percentage is. It could be 50%, it could be 10%, whatever you agree on. And it goes directly to them. So I don't want to say they cut you out, but they're making sure they get your money.
Right.
So you want to be aware of that. If someone or a company approaches you about doing that you're okay with that up front, because if you're not, you're giving away your work.
Right.
And depending on where you're at in your career, you may have to do that. The question is, what is the percentage of that? Anything else on copyright?
Well, so just to reiterate, let's say I copyright a song over here in the States and then it gets famous in Japan. What would then be the next step of the process?
I mean, you got to get it copywritten there. Is it necessary? No, because you do have it registered in some countries, but it's going to make things easier on their side
if they want to do something.
If someone else takes it.
Right.
I mean, it's going to be pretty obvious this is so-and-so's song, but you don't know.
Yeah.
The person you think it's their song could have gotten it from somebody else. That happens a lot, and we're seeing that on TikTok. Especially with these different dances. I was watching an episode on TikTok and people who created dances, and then you go on TikTok and you found out they saw somebody else down south in the States who did it. And they used it, borrowed it, but that person had a bigger following.
Right.
So it's backtracking. Where did it actually come from? So my suggestion is, if you see yourself working there, pay the money and do it.
Right.
It's better to be safe. It's not the end of the world, but you don't want someone to say, I think I'm going to use that.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to be in that situation.
Right.
All right, guys. Thanks for joining us today. It's been another great episode. Thank you, Mr. Hunt.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
All right. This is Music Business.
What is this?
We'll see you later. This program is partially supported by a grant from the Illinois Arts Council Agency.